Good afternoon, I'm Henry Keane and we are UATV English. We debunk Russian propaganda with Ukrainian truth for our global sake. Please join us, comment and subscribe. Let us do it together. Welcome to the News Pools. See in the episode, USA changes rhetoric towards Russia. Hungarian spies detained in Ukraine. Zelensky Trump call, learn the details. Day of Europe and victory over Nazism is celebrated on May 8th all over the world, but not in Russia. May 9th is the day of victory there, mayhem and propaganda of war. And Putin also welcomes officials from North Korea, which is actively helping the Kremlin dictator with weapons and troops. And congratulations. Well, this year's event is set to feature high-profile guests such as China's Xi Jinping, Brazil's Lula da Silva and Slovakia's Robert Fico, marking a stark contrast from past years where few international figures attended. And the Chinese guest announced that Russia and China are friends of steel, direct quote, not clear as S-T-E-E-L or S-T-E-A-L, marking a critical point in the American administration attempts to sever Russia from Chinese influence. China and Russia are called friends of steel, reportedly on Xi's direct speech, and his words are confirmed today by China's foreign ministry. Let's hear what they are about to say to us.
President Xi Jinping pointed out that China and Russia are good neighbors with an unshakable friendship, true friends who share weal and woe, and good partners who achieve mutual success. China's relations have clear historical logic, strong endogenous driving force, and profound civilizational heritage. They are not directed against any third party and are not subject to any third party.
I had a chance to speak with the American ambassador Kurt Volker in person in Kyiv today regarding the matter of the alleged Chinese grip on Russia. How real is that, and what is actual Chinese interest today?
To Xi and China, I don't think Xi cares about Russia at all. I think they view it opportunistically. If Russia can sell them cheap energy, they'll buy it. If Russia will buy Chinese goods, they'll sell them. They like the idea of weakening a Western grip on the global international order. So if Putin is instrumental in weakening that grip, that's good. But Xi's economic interests are much more wrapped up in Europe and the United States than they are in Russia. They definitely want to pursue their Belt and Road initiative with Europe. Russia's not important in that.
We can hear the changing rhetoric of the USA, even in the statements of J.D. Vance, who was not too harsh before in his statements regarding the Kremlin policies. But now something happened. He stated that Russia is asking for, I quote, too much, end of quote, in the initial stage of negotiations.
Well, we'll see what happens, of course, but look, we knew that Russia would ask for too much because the Russian perception of the war is on the ground, they're winning. And of course, the Ukrainians would like to do a ceasefire, in part because things have not been going so well for the Ukrainians the last few months. And our attitude is we don't want Ukraine to collapse. We obviously want Ukraine to remain a sovereign country, but Russia can't expect to be given territory that they haven't even conquered yet. And that's one of the things that they put down in that initial peace plan. So I actually think it's progress that they're even talking at all, the Russians and the Ukrainians. I think it's progress that they're putting concrete peace plans on the table. But we knew that the Russians' first offer would be too much. We knew that they would ask for more than was reasonable to give. That's how negotiations often work.
Russia geared up for its annual Victory Day parade today. This year's atmosphere was notably tense, while Moscow's wide avenues filled with vintage tanks and the scent of fuel from military trucks, looming questions surrounded the safety of this year's event. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky previously commented that Ukraine cannot be held responsible for what happens during the Russian parade, fueling speculation about potential drone strikes targeting military infrastructure inside Russia. Well, it is still 9th of May now, so we still have time. Hungarian military intelligence spy network exposed for the first time in Ukraine's history. A spy network of Hungary's military intelligence has been exposed for conducting espionage, obviously, harmful to the Ukrainian state, as per Security Service of Ukraine.
The objective of this network was to gather intelligence on the military defenses of the Zakarpattia region, identify vulnerabilities in its ground and air defense systems, and assess the socio-political views of local residents, particularly how they might react if Hungarian troops were to enter the region. Following a series of comprehensive operations in Zakarpattia, the security service detained 2 agents from this Hungarian intelligence network.
The investigation revealed the curator of these spies was a key officer of Hungary's military intelligence, whose identity has already been established. The agents themselves turned out to be former military personnel. According to the intelligence service, one of the agents was tasked with assessing public sentiment and gathering info on how both the civilian population and military personnel in Transcarpathia might respond if a peacekeeping force, specifically Hungarian troops, enters the region. He was also assigned to find out what military equipment and weapons were available on the Zakarpattia black market, analyze the state of Hungarian migration in the region, identify local military units, assess the number of military vehicles in transport, and evaluate the staffing levels and strength of law enforcement agencies. This agent then personally conducted reconnaissance on the locations of Ukraine's defense forces and the location coordinates of S-300 surface-to-air missile systems in the region. The Security Service of Ukraine noted that the Foreign Intelligence Agency aimed to expand its network's capabilities to collect data not only in Transcarpathia but also from areas near and directly on the front lines. In March this year, Ukrainian counterintelligence documented a second meeting between one of the agents and his curator. The agent received a mobile phone equipped with special software for covert communication. His new assignments included identifying official vehicles used by members of Ukraine's security and defense forces in Transcarpathia. In addition, he was instructed to gather and transmit intel on Ukrainian armed forces casualties and current events on the front line, from the front line. The agent had already established a contact within defense forces to fulfill this task, according to the SBU. Another agent, a former service woman of Ukraine's security and defense forces who left the military in 2025. Her assignments included reporting to Hungarian intelligence on the presence of aircraft and helicopters in Zakarpattia, as well as the defense systems of the military unit where she had served previously. Now, all the necessary actions are taken to bring all members of the Hungarian intelligence network to justice. I am now making a colossal effort to not make a joke about Viktor Orban. The situation is just begging for it, but we just slide smoothly to more news here. On May 8th, President Volodymyr Zelensky had a phone conversation with President of the United States, Donald Trump. As Zelensky reported later on Telegram, their dialogue was warm and constructive. They both greeted their nations on Victory Day over Nazism, welcomed the Economic Partnership Agreement ratified by the Ukrainian Parliament and signed by parties, and discussed specific steps that could be taken towards just peace.
We spoke with the President about joint actions, the support of the United States that is so urgently needed, and pressure on Russia, pressure for the sake of peace. We discussed the situation on the front lines. We discussed diplomatic efforts. We talked about how to bring closer a real and lasting ceasefire for at least 30 days. That could open up many opportunities for diplomacy. Ukraine is ready for a full ceasefire starting right now from this very moment, a 30-day silence. But it must be real.
Shortly after the phone call, Trump made a statement on the social media platform Truth Social. He said that negotiations on ceasefire in Ukraine are ongoing and warned of sanctions for any violations.
The US calls for, ideally, a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. Hopefully, an acceptable ceasefire will be observed, and both countries will be held accountable for respecting the sanctity of these direct negotiations. If the ceasefire is not respected, the US and its partners will impose further sanctions. Donald Trump, President of the United States, on Truth Social.
Trump also reiterated that thousands of young soldiers are dying weekly, and everybody should want it to stop. Trump added that he would remain committed to ensuring peace between Russia and Ukraine alongside Europeans, and a lasting peace it will be.
This ceasefire must ultimately build toward a peace agreement. It can all be done very quickly, and I will be available on a moment's notice if my services are needed. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald Trump, President of the United States, on Truth Social.
Today, May 9th, Europe is celebrating the Day of Europe. Delegations from 35 countries and the Council of Europe have arrived in Ukraine. Today, we celebrate the Day of Europe with Ukraine and its people because in a family, both joys and hardships are shared. An informal meeting of EU foreign ministers took place in Lviv. On the agenda was more weapons and support for Ukraine, pressure on Russia, advancing Ukraine's EU membership, creating a tribunal for Putin and his partners in crime. It is expected that on Saturday, May 10th, the leaders of Germany, France, the United Kingdom and Poland will visit Kyiv for ceremonial and commemorative events. This could send a significant diplomatic signal amid Putin's propaganda activities, and I hope it will. And returning to the thesis that Russia is looking for peace, April became the most deadly month for Ukrainian civilians in the last 6 months of this war, according to a United Nations report. With hits on civilian areas, residential buildings all over the country, and documented cases of civilians being targeted, the aggressor does not seem to stop. It doesn't look very friendly and peaceful if you announce intentions to allegedly end the war, and then right after that, dozens of strikes happen against civilian targets, even with cluster munitions. Our military correspondent Alyona Gramova was near the front line, as always, and joins an evacuation crew that helps take people out of the most dangerous areas.
From the Pokrovsk district in Donetsk region, evacuation of civilians continues. In some settlements, mandatory evacuation has been announced for families with children. Police evacuation teams known as White Angel arrived in armored vehicles to pick people up.
Let's go.
These officers are from Bakhmut. After their hometown was occupied by Russian forces, they continued their work and are now saving residents of Pokrovsk district. This trip is to the village of Sweetly, just 15 kilometers from the front line. They are evacuating a large family.
We chose a relatively safe route because all access roads are currently targeted by enemy drones.
The village of Sweetly is under artillery and drone attack by Russian forces. The family being evacuated is given bulletproof vests and seated inside an armored capsule.
Maybe sit the little one there, closer to the wall.
The three sisters, aged 7, 14 and 17, were living with their father and adult brother. Their mother passed away 8 years ago. Why didn't she leave earlier?
Well, it wasn't as loud before, just some explosions, but now it's really close.
The White Angel evacuation teams have been operating in combat zones since December 2022.
First, police take people from the shelled areas to a shelter, then volunteers help relocate them to safer regions.
This evacuated family will soon be taken by volunteers to Kyiv region, where they'll receive housing assistance. Since mandatory evacuation for families with children began in late March, over 300 minors have already been evacuated from Pokrovsk district with their parents. Reported by Alexandra Zaslavets, Alyona Gramova from Donetsk region, UATV News.
Well, that was it for tonight. I'm Henry Keane and we are UATV English. We debunk Russian propaganda. That's what we do with Ukrainian truth for all our global sake. It was News Pulse. Stay tuned for more and see you the next week. Goodbye.